Some viewers may find the following video disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Board Games Unlocked, and today I'm doing a discussion for the solo variant of Nucleum. So this was a game, one of the newest games by Board and Dice, and designed by Simone Luciani and David Turczi. And if you see David Turczi's name on any game, you basically know that he designed the solo variant, which I think it even says Solo Mode by David Turczi on the box. He's widely renowned as one of the best solo designers, at least in my opinion, of a lot of Euro games. Like, to me, if you see that he designed the solo variant, you just know that it's going to work and that it's going to be amazing. And Nucleum is no exception. It's phenomenal. And for a game like Nucleum, it blows my mind how he is able to come up with a system that works as a solo game, because there's so many moving parts in Nucleum. Like, it's on the heavier side of the Board and Dice games, I think. Like, I'd probably put it up there with Tekhenu and Tawantinsuyu for Board and Dice. Like, it's definitely up there, but I feel like it kind of actually is a lot more manageable than both of those. Like, I feel like it's a little easier to grasp. But because you're building railway networks and there's a lot of kind of place these railroads where you want, develop a network, use that network to build buildings and place workers and deal with contracts and all these different actions, you would just think, okay, well, a solo variant is going to be... What I expected was it to just kind of fast forward the game so that it's kind of a timer for the player. And it is not. It is that. Like, it has elements of that, but it also has an AI that is playing the game in a relatively smart way. Now, there are a couple things of the solo variant that I don't... It's not that I don't like them, it's just they're not my favorite. Because in Nucleum, money and workers can be on the tighter side. There are ways for you to just kind of have a lot of them as the game progresses, depending on the action tiles you get. But there are ways for it to be tighter. And while the AI does work with them, it's called the Baron. Well, the Baron does actually have to manage money and workers. It's not as restrictive as you are. Like, whenever it goes to place turbines or buildings on red spaces where it would cost more, it ignores that. Or railways, it would it would ignore that. And whenever it would have to use one of your turbines, it doesn't pay you, and just kind of things like that. But the reason why I say that I don't completely hate that is because it still has to manage workers and its money. And if it doesn't have any money but it has workers, it'll continue to do a turn. But if it has to basically urbanize or industrialize or energize and it doesn't have any money, it just doesn't do those actions, which I think is awesome. Like, if this AI didn't have to worry about money at all, I would actively dislike it. I don't like games where you as a player are so restricted on resources and the AI is not. So that's kind of like, it's a double-edged sword where it's like, okay, yeah, it doesn't have to pay those extra costs, but at the same time, because it's randomly kind of picking its actions, it can kind of get hosed every now and then. And then with workers, it's kind of the same way. It will, the way it places the railways just kind of makes sense, because at the end of the day, what it's basically doing is casting a wide network, which then gives it options for all the other actions. And man, it's just brilliant, because the way it works is you have 6 tiles. You have his starting tiles, which from a random, you give it a random experiment, A through D, and you basically just give it its starting tiles, and it's what's called the stopgap, which is like the I was playing on the other side of my table, which is this tile, the one that's kind of like the do whatever action for a thaler less. that's kind of it's what's called the stopgap, which basically means all the tiles are before it, but if it ever has to do a regular action, it goes behind it, and eventually it will recharge when that stopgap is at the front. Because it has 6 tiles, so 4 of its starting tiles, and then 2 random ones that are unused. You shuffle those up, and it goes in like a queue. So you have 6 tiles in front of the stopgap, and then you roll a die that goes 1 through 4. You would think 1 through 6, but I'm pretty sure it does not have a. Ooh, the die is so far over there. 1, 2. Yeah. Okay, it doesn't go to 6. 1 to 4, and on its turn, is you roll the die, and then you look at the action tile that is in that lineup. So, okay, the second action tile, if it's a 2. And basically, it always wants to either prioritize a recharge, which it only does if it has no money and no workers, and if the stopgap is at the front of the queue. Otherwise, it wants to prioritize a railway action, meaning that it wants to take the tile that it just rolled, so the second tile, and it wants to place it trying to match colors in like a domino style effect, in ways that it can basically expand its network. And it only does that if it has, if the actions, like the 5 main actions, if it has more than one of those on the in its queue. So, for example, if the tile that it rolled has energize and gain 2 workers, so a subsidized action. If it has another tile that has an energize action, then it will actually take the tile that you rolled, the 2 one, and it will actually place it as a railway on the map. And I find that extremely fascinating because it basically means it will always have those 5 actions, no matter what. It will always have at least all 5 actions available. Because then if it doesn't, let's say it only had the 1 energize action, then it will actually just do a regular action, and like it would just actually energize. It'll still do the actions as normal whenever it places and matches colors, but the fact that it always has those actions available is so smart. Because every time it was doing something, every time it was doing the develop or the contract or all the 5 actions, I was like, yeah, this just kind of makes sense. And at the very beginning of the game, Nucleum kind of has this element of you want to extend your turns as much as possible because you kind of want to be the last one to recharge. Because if you can control the King's Day scoring, that's 6 points. 6 points is not nothing if you can be ahead of everyone when you're the one who pops the King's Day scoring. But at the very beginning of, like, before it recharges, it's doing a lot of actions. Like, it's going to have doubles. I mean, it can develop, which gets it more actions, which means it's going to really expand its railways and its network. But kind of once it recharges, it becomes very honed in. Like, it like, in my experience, it would recharge. At the very beginning, it would take a while, and then the next couple recharges would be very short. Like, it wouldn't have as many tiles. It wouldn't be getting as many tiles. It's kind of done placing its network, or it's kind of done expanding its network. It's placed its turbines. And that just feels in the heart of Nucleum, which I find just, again, mind-boggling that it even worked. Because it will also mess with you. Like, Nucleum, I would say, is not really a cutthroat game. Yeah, you can take things that other players might want. You might go into cities that they might want. But overall, you can kind of, especially in a 2-player game, you can kind of just isolate yourself. But if he will build turbines in places that you want to go. And a lot of his actions will kind of be, take the most optimal spot. Like when it's building mines, it's like, oh, it wants to go on the spot that has the most benefits, that gives you the bonus uranium. It wants to go there. Whenever it's building buildings, it wants to go in, the most optimal spot. And that felt very natural for an AI. Like, whenever it's taking, not contracts, whenever it's taking action tiles, it wants to go for the cheapest ones, for ones that it only has one of, because it wants to expand its railways. So it kind of just, and it always takes 2 tiles. It doesn't have to pay for them, but it always wants to take 2. So in my experience, it's almost always the leftmost ones, but there are tiebreakers and stuff for that. The one thing I don't necessarily like, but again, it's more of a double-edged sword, is whenever he takes contracts, before his first recharge, he'll only focus on silver contracts. And obviously, he doesn't have to meet the requirements. Basically, when he takes a contract, he gets the victory points, and the technology levels, he just gets points depending on their level. So this one, it would be 5 points. It's 3 points, and then a level 2 technology. So the 2 technology is 2 points. And he automatically completes those. And the reason why I say it's a double-edged sword is that's kind of annoying. He will have a tiebreaker and most likely will take the tile that's worth the most points. But he only gets points. He doesn't get money or any other benefit. And then the double-edged sword part is that whenever he goes to do a contract action, if he has 3 completed contracts, he just gains $1, or a thaler. Thaler. Which, that's kind of nice, because if he's gotten 3 contracts really quick, just by happenstance, that's what you've rolled and the tiles he's happened to get, at least it's okay, well, he's not just going to keep taking all the contracts. There are some AI games where it's nope, he'll just keep taking them, and they just keep racking up points. And I'm well, that's kind of annoying, because contracts can be worth a lot. They can be a real huge clutch whenever you need uranium or money or achievement tokens. It's well, I can complete that one, and he keeps taking them. So I like the fact that there is a limit. Now, whenever he recharges, it goes away. Those 3 contracts goes away, and now he can gather more. So kind of a double-edged sword, which is okay. So that's the contract action. The milestones, which are, if I have any advice for anyone playing this game, is understand how the Baron scores at the end. For me, every time I'm learning a new solo variant, I'm I don't need to worry about that. We'll just see what happens. And then usually that hoses me at the end, where I'm oh, they get a lot of points at the end. I have a significant lead, and they just, beat me. Because what'll happen is whenever the Baron recharges, he starts with a star on the number 1 spot. And every time it recharges, he gets 4 Thaler, 4 workers, and then he places the next star 6 spaces up from his latest one. Which basically means he's gonna contribute to at least, if he recharges 3 times, well, the game's about to end anyway, but that means he's gonna have a star in every single milestone. And why I say that's very important is because what that does is kind of a measurement of you as the player, because if he's recharging after you, he might place the star ahead of you, which means he's going to get the 6 points. Otherwise, at the end of the game, he gets 2 points for the first milestone, 4 points for the second, 6 points for the third, and 8 points for the fourth, for each time he meets those requirements. So, if you are paying attention to what he's doing and what the milestones are, he might, at the very end, if he gets to the 4th one, let's say the 4th one is the milestone of having yellow buildings, and he has a star in that section, and he has all yellow buildings out, was that 32? 32 points is what he's just going to get, because he has all 4 of the yellow buildings out, and that's worth 8 points for him. And actually, funny enough, in this latest game, because he expands his network so quick, the third level was the milestone of for every 2 railways to have your worker on it, and he had 7 pairs. So he had 14 railways, 7 pairs, which basically was, what I say, that was 6. So 6 pairs, 7, or 6 points, 7 pairs, 35 points he just got from that. And that's stuff you have to take into consideration. Why I love David Turchi's solo variants is because it just feels fair. You can see what the milestones are. You can see what actions. You know the die can roll 1 to 4. If you know that he has some higher, if he has more available action tiles that have contracts available, you can look and be like, okay, well, chances are he's going to take a contract. I don't want him to take a contract because that's the one I can complete, and it's also worth the most points. So I guess I'm going to actually use my contract action tile to make sure I can get it. And because you have imperfect information, meaning you can see what options are available to you, but you don't know exactly what they're going to do, which feels more natural of another player. Like if you're playing against another person, you can see what action tiles they have, and you can look at the board state, and you can be like, well, that's probably what they're going to do, or, that purple contract tile is to have 6 things built in purple cities. I have 6, but so do they. Alright, yeah, I guess I'll do this action too. I won't do this, I'll do this so I can complete that. It gives you that same kind of feeling. Because what's fantastic about his designs, and especially in this, is you play like normal. My favorite types, and I say this in almost all good AI solo variants, is my favorite types are the ones where I get to play my game and without the stress of competition of another player. Because if I lose to the bot, then it's just myself, and I'm like, okay, and I move on. But losing to another player, there's that element of like, damn, they were better than me. Or it's like, what did I do wrong that they did so right? But you get to experiment. You can be like, oh, I'm going to try this strategy in this game. And this solo variant allows you to do that. So in both ways for this solo variant, for the Baron, it's a slight, it does what AI does, it takes things from you, blocks spots, accelerates the game a little bit, but at the same time, this one also plays very similarly, at least as close to as I would ever think, to another player. And what's also fascinating is, and at first I wasn't sure if I was going to like this, but I actually do, just because of the nature of the way the bot plays, is in the solo variant, you only complete 2 of the... it says 4 because he can't hit a flag, a endgame condition, by hitting 70 points. All the other ones they can complete. But you only complete 2 of those. Instead, if you play this game as a 2-player game, you have to hit 3, which is either empty the stack of action tiles, empty the stack of contracts, get all 8 of your technologies, someone hits 70 points, or the King's Day has gone 3 times. 4 of those can be met in a solo variant, but 2 of them will actually trigger the end game. And I actually like that. It felt very good of a length, and funny enough, before doing the solo variant, I also played a 2-player game to see what that was like, and it actually felt good both ways, because just the way that the solo variant works, just hitting 2 of those, it's like, yep, I'm ready for it to be done. And what they also added, I should have grabbed these before I sat down, is he has what's called a logic deck, which is just a deck of 15 cards, and these are essentially your tiebreakers. Or for 2 of the actions, the urbanize and industrialize, that kind of is what his priorities are. So whenever he wants to build a turbine or a mine, you just draw the card, and it's going to tell you what he wants to build. Whatever he has the least of. In this, it might be turbines. Or this time he wants to build a mine. Or he wants to build a turbine. And then also whenever it's determining what buildings, you just have a stack of buildings that go levels 3, 4, 2, and 1. And then whenever it goes to build, you just draw the top card and it's like, oh, it wants to build, I don't know what these are called, the brown buildings. You just take the top stack, follow the tie-breaking requirements, and build it. The one action that it does that I was kind of surprised that it didn't like feel as important was energize. Because energize is huge for the player. Like whenever you go to energize building, that's where you're going to get achievement tokens. That's where you're going to ramp up on your tracks. That's where you're going to get money. That's where you're going to get workers. And game victory points, all that stuff. It's huge for you, but really it's more endgame for the Baron, for the bot. Because it doesn't really get that many victory points for using it. What this also does, which I found was very smart, was whenever it goes to energize, what it kind of does is it just gets rid of your coal. Is what, if he can draw, obviously he'll energize if he can draw a track to the coal or to a power plant with mines. And really it's like, okay, he wants to do the ones with the lowest requirements, so like the lower levels. And let's say it's a level 1, and he can draw it to a coal area and to a coal mine or to a coal power plant, then he just imports 1 coal. If it's a level 4, he imports 4 coal. So that I actually found to be very nice because it also is one of the most complex actions for a player, and it wasn't really that complex for the bot. It's just kind of like, oh, that's the one that's going to do. It's a level 2. It can draw here. Okay, well, it's going to get rid of these 2 coals. Okay. And then it gets points if the power plant has a Nucleum. It'll get a point for each of its turbines there, and it'll also get points if you can draw a mine to it, but only 1 point. So if, like, it wasn't getting that many points. But what I found was whenever it scores at the end, it's like it obviously scores for all of its energized buildings. So very easy for it to energize, but also not that big of a deal, especially if you've utilized coal also, then it taking away coal isn't that bad. But yeah, it's, God, like, I don't know what is, like, his method is to figure out how to. I mean, like, I don't think he just designed the solo variant. I think him and Simone, or Simon, co-designed this, so it's probably a matter of, well, I helped design the game, and in that method of designing the game, I was also designing how to make the AI work, but yeah, I expected it to be garbage. And the other thing that it does super well is have a phenomenal player aid. This is one of the reasons why I thought Tawantin Suyu solo variant was, or not solo variant, just gameplay in general was its player aid, was like, as long as you read the rules and you're like, okay, I get it, that player aid was a godsend. This is just as good. The player aids for the regular game are also really good, but man, like, it actually has a tree, like an action tree, for you to determine how the Baron works. It's like, okay, it's the Baron's turn. Is the first tile the stop block? No. Does the Baron have a worker or a thaler? Yes. Roll to select a tile. Does a tile match railway requirements? No. Does a regular turn? Okay. And then whenever it does a regular turn, you can just see urbanize and what it does, and then you're like, oh, okay, so I know what those do. And all the subsidized actions, it's like, okay, it has the 2 worker with arrows. Oh, it gains 2 workers. Cool. And whenever it's doing a railway turn, it's like only if Baron has another tile with the same actions, and then it tells you the tiebreakers. Like, this is phenomenal. Like, once you get a couple, like, I'd say, hell, even one or two games of the solo variant of Nucleum under your belt, you're just going to need this back sheet, and it is awesome. Like this top flow chart is fantastic because it also has the preference of actions on it. Whenever it's like, well, it has urbanize and develop on that action tile. Oh, it wants to urbanize first, or well, it can only match a railway with one of these colors based off what's on the board. So which one's it going to do? Oh, it wants to match the urbanize because that's the action it wants to do the most. Yeah, I had to talk about the logic deck is clean and quick whenever you need a tiebreaker for certain things. It's just like, oh, okay, it wants to place the building, it can place it there or there, and oh, it wants to do the highest numbered building. Okay, well, it's going to go into Brux because it was between Brux and it's upside down. Marienburg. Well, that's a 7 to a 14, so it's going to go in 14. Yeah, it's fantastic. I'm trying to think of like negatives that I could think of. I mean, really just the double-edged sword kind of things where it could have been way worse. Still not my favorite, but at least there was something for it, and that was doesn't have to worry about money as much, but I've had multiple instances where it's like, well, not doing those actions because it doesn't have any money. That's nice. I think that's also to compensate that it's like, well, if it always had to worry about money, and then it would basically always have dead turns, and it doesn't really have a whole lot of dead turns. And then the contracts where it just kind of automatically fulfills them and gets points no matter what. But then it's limited at 3 until it recharges. So then it's like, okay, well then it's going to get money, which means it's going to get to do those 3 actions at least once. Yeah, it's fantastic. So on a scale of 1 to 10, for the Nucleum solo variant, man, I'm gonna have to give it a 10. It's really, really good. Like, and it was, I think, normally it'd be a 9, but it's kind of one of those variants that it's not, at least, this is gonna sound like, at least for me, it wasn't like I was invested so much. I was like trying to figure out how it worked whenever I first learned how to play it. I wasn't sitting there like, oh my god. Now, it does have a lot of tiebreakers, and it's trying to, but again, those are yes or no statements. It's kind of like, okay, can it draw a line back to a power plant? No. Okay, so it's not doing that. It's not energizing. Like, yeah, and then you play your game, and then as long as you know how the Baron scores at the end, then yeah, then you're good. I'm amazed. So that is my thoughts on the solo variant for Nucleum. Let me know what you think of the solo variant in the comments below. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you. Hey everyone, thank you for watching, and I really hope that you enjoyed the video. If you would like to see more of my content, go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell to be notified whenever I upload any new content. If you feel like supporting the channel, you can go ahead and click that Patreon link to be taken to my Patreon, and any help is truly appreciated. Other than that, stick around for any other run-throughs or reviews or cool top 10s or whatever I feel like putting on. Other than that, like, comment, share, and subscribe, and have a wonderful whatever time of day it is for you.